Okay, that looks like everyone's in. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Darren. I am one of the marketing coordinators for BCIT's School of Health Sciences, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this information session for the Health Leadership Advanced Certificate Program. I want to say how happy we are to see you all, and thank you for attending our presentation today. Just one thing before we get going, I want to say that the British Columbia Institute of Technology acknowledges that our campuses are located on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish Nations of Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam. And now I'd like to call up Shan Chatoglu to introduce the department and speak about the program. Thank you, Shan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shan Chatoglu. I'm the program head of the Healthcare Management Department at BCIT. I've been at BCIT for 20 years. In addition to my teaching role, I'm involved with research at BCIT. I'm the chair of the research committee in the School of Health Sciences. I've also done some work with applied research and commercialization in another part of BCIT, done work in analytics as well. But my main passion at BCIT is teaching and learning with and through our students and our classes. And so I'm really happy that you've found some time this evening to join this information session. Darren, could you flip the slide a little bit? Yeah, and so the focus of our department at BCIT is on the working healthcare professional, people who are in health occupations in the health sector. It's a continuing education department within our school, and our mission is to inspire and educate health leaders who wish to develop their leadership and management skills to help transform the health system from where we are to where we need to be. Next slide, please. So this is our agenda for today. Bit of welcome, that's what we're doing right now. We're going to do some roundtable introductions. In the interest of people's privacy, I'm not going to ask people to everybody introduce themselves and their names and so on, but I will ask for people to share some information in the Zoom chat tool, which we'll do in a minute. And then we'll have about 20 minutes where I'll go through a presentation, and then at the end, there's some time for Q&A. Just looking at the numbers of participants on the call, it's not a super large group. It's kind of a good medium size. So if you do feel like speaking up and asking questions, there is a kind of an icon that you can press to raise your hand. But this is being recorded, so it's up to you to kind of gauge how you want to interact today. Next slide, please. All right, so let's start off with the roundtable introductions through the Zoom chat. If you don't mind, please type into the chat tool and indicate what is your current role, what is your academic background, and what I'm always interested in is where are you located? What's your geographic location? So let's take 5 minutes and just type some information into the chat tool. All right, so this is our vision statement from our department perspective at BCIT for the Healthcare Management Department. The future of healthcare is going to be more patient and family-centered, more prevention-oriented, less hospital-focused, less profession-focused, more accountable to the public, more interprofessional, and will be serving an increasingly older population. So the kind of the reflective question here is, who are going to be the clinical and non-clinical leaders of the future health system and how to play a part in this transformation? Next slide, please. So in Canada, we often pride ourselves about our public healthcare system. The certain levels of care are accessible to all participants in society. We often compare ourselves to the US, and by comparison, we're pretty confident. But on an international scale, we're really not at the top of the rankings. We're kind of in the lower half. So you can see here in Canada, this is a report from the Commonwealth Fund, which is quite an authoritative report of health system rankings across the globe. Canada is kind of at number 10, close to number 11, which is the US, and the number 1, 2, and 3 are Norway, Netherlands, and Australia. So some of the areas that could possibly be improved seems to be access, equity, and healthcare outcomes. Next slide, please. So another diagram looking at healthcare system performance that's on the y-axis and on the x-axis spending. So once again, we're kind of not near the top. We're kind of in the medium-ish area. Next slide, please. So that's at a global level, but if we kind of take a look at the provincial level, just last week, the Ministry of Health posted the new health services plan for the next 3 years. These are the statements from the provincial government from a policy directive perspective as where health system is going. And you can see these goals, there's only 3 goals listed with numerous sub-goals. And one trick, if you ever want to kind of study priorities, is just count the number of objectives underneath. There are 4 objectives under the first goal. Goal number 2 and 3 each have 2 objectives. So clearly goal number 1 is important. And if you read that to yourself, ensure a focus on service delivery areas requiring strategic repositioning. So that really points to change. It's clearly not about maintaining quality or making improvements. It's actually about strategic repositioning. And so the areas that are going to be changing are moving towards a more integrated primary care model, focusing on seniors, mental health, timely access, surgical and diagnostic procedures. And then goal number 2 and 3, these are things that we're also certainly really aware of. Focusing on equitable population health, prevention, some of these areas that have become more into the public eye recently, the importance of pharmaceutical care, laboratory and diagnostic services with the kind of the learnings from the pandemic. As well, focusing on a sustainable health system. This is goal number 3. Especially around engaged and skilled diverse workforce. So if you are running a department, probably there's going to be really important need to bring in some new people to grow the department and to deal with some of the stresses and burnouts as a result of the pandemic. So clearly the system is changing and it really needs people who can exercise leadership at the clinical and the non-clinical levels. Next slide, please, Darren. So sometimes, in the news, when we talk about leadership, it's always easy to point a finger to say, well, it's not here and we need it. And it's kind of a big kind of, sometimes it sounds like it's the solution. And so there's a lot of talk. This is a kind of Warren Bennis is a thinker, a classic thinker on leadership in the last 30 years. And he has this point, leadership is like the abominable snowman. His footprints are everywhere, but is nowhere to be seen. So it's kind of like these big phrases that are easily to toss around, but when it comes right down to it, we need to be more specific. Next slide, please. So when you embark in learning about leadership, you could go to the bookstore, you can look up Amazon, and there's tons and tons of books, a lot of concepts on leadership, everywhere from real leadership or strengths-based leadership, leadership scorecard, leadership 101, on and on and on. So it's kind of a vast space to kind of delve into. Next slide, please, Darren. But the key thing, and this is what we do with our students in the very first course in the program, is to come up with a personalized definition of leadership that's relevant for you at this point in your career and relevant to the kind of changes that you would like to see in the next few years. This is a phrase that I like. Leadership is accepting responsibility for enabling others to achieve a shared purpose in the face of uncertainty. So really creating, making sense of the situation and supporting one's team, one's department to move in that direction. Next slide, please. And next slide, please, one more. Okay, so let's switch gears here, kind of from the big picture macro scale and talking about BCIT. So our department, Healthcare Management, has been delivering continuing education for health professionals for about 30 years. In the beginning, we had a Healthcare Management Level 1 and 2 certificate. This was delivered in classroom on the weekend classroom based at BCIT on the Burnaby campus. And then over the years, it got converted to a correspondence-based program with tests and packages of paper going back and forth with deadlines. And then in around 2000, the world switched to online. There was e-commerce, e-this, e-that, e-learning really picked up, and then our whole department shifted our attention towards online delivery of coursework and programs. So we've had a few programs over the years: clinical research, health informatics, health quality improvement. And our flagship program now is the Health Leadership Advanced Certificate, which was launched in 2013. Next slide, please. So in terms of the students in the program, if you are in the program and you just look over your shoulder to see who else is there, about half of the people come from one of the allied health professions that are technology-based, really similar to the programs that BCIT offers, in addition to nursing. So the imaging areas and the medical laboratory areas. And then as well in our program, people have nursing baccalaureate training. There's also some people with BA and BSc, usually from SFU, health sciences training, university-based. And then there's actually some people with graduate level studies, MAs, MPH, and so on. And then there's some people who are more from the business sector. So like project management, finance, HR, capital planning, risk management, fundraising, so a lot of other sectors as well, and some people who are crossing in between sectors towards healthcare. So that's kind of painting a picture of who are some of the other participants in the program. Next slide, please, Darren. So in terms of the fields, these are the kind of disciplines that you'd see in the program. The ones that are shown in blue, these are professions and occupations that BCIT graduates our students into after entry to practice. So for example, sonography, clinical genetics, MRI, X-ray, these are all people who kind of come out of their first credential in health sciences at BCIT, but you also see the professions that are in red, so pharmacy, respiratory therapy, physiotherapy, clinical trials administration, gerontology, nurse practitioner. These are all areas that we don't actually teach at BCIT, but people come to BCIT to access our courses. So one thing that we're really proud about in our program in health leadership is the interprofessional learning environment, where people can interact with teams across the different professions, as well as some of the areas that are not exactly health related, but they're enablers for the health system. Next slide, please. In terms of age, people are kind of generally past that sort of really uncertain early stages of a career. People are kind of, they've got their toe in the door, they're making progress professionally. They're no longer trying to just kind of graduate from the first credential, learning how to fit in and getting lives organized. They're kind of past that stage and looking for how to get to the next level. So typically, you can see from the bar chart, that's the kind of distribution of the age group of students in our program, around 36-ish, plus or minus. Next slide, please. And could you click a few times, Darren, just to fill in the text? Keep going, keep going. Okay, that's good. So this is a kind of a way to illustrate stages of career. And clearly our focus is the emerging professional and also getting to the advancing and leading stages. So this program is probably right for people who, like I said before, they have some discretionary latitude at work where they can apply leadership in their context. If their work is really constrained and they're just learning the ropes, it's probably a little bit early. But if you're interested in leadership, there are some courses that you can still take from our program, and I could describe some of that later. Next slide, please, Darren. And let's go to the next one. Let's keep going. We'll be distributing the slides for those of you who want to read up on this further. Okay, so the Advanced Certificate in Health Leadership, this is what you're here to hear about. Next slide, please, Darren. So our program in Health Leadership at BCIT is an advanced certificate. This is a credential that is part of the formal range of credentials at BCIT. It's governed through the Education Council and certified by the Board of Governors at BCIT. The courses are upper level, so they're kind of like the fourth year university level of study and just getting into graduate level studies in terms of the kind of concepts, the complexity of concepts, and the level of reading and writing and communication that you do. There are 8 courses that you complete over 2 years for a total of 24 credits. The courses are all cross-referenced to the Leads in a Caring Environment, which is a competency profile for health leaders in Canada. This profile was actually developed initially through Royal Roads University in Victoria, but funded by the Ministry of Health. So it's a homegrown leadership capability profile. And then since that time, it has spread across Canada. So if you will look at some of the health authorities in Canada, as well as some of the professional industry associations, you'll see Leads in a Caring Environment mentioned. As well, if you look at Accreditation Canada, this is an accrediting body that certifies health organizations. You'll see Leads also mentioned there. So it's a really important competency profile to associate yourself in your studies with. It's so that the whole industry can build on a common core body of knowledge. So when you get through the halfway point in the program, after completing 4 courses, you'll be provided a statement of completion. This is not an academic credential, but it's an indicator of getting to the halfway point, which you could use on your LinkedIn profile and tell your family and so on. And then after completing all 8 courses, you get the advanced certificate from BCIT. Entrance requirements are a health sciences diploma or a bachelor degree. The bachelor degree can be in any field or higher credentials as well. But you do have to have English 12 at the 73% level or equivalent. But the key factor for success in the program is to have sufficient work experience so that you have some discretionary latitude at work, where you can start applying leadership at work and then integrating your work with your studies. Most people have 5 to 15 years of experience, and that creates a really great mix of experience in the class, which actually contributes to the learning environment. Currently employed in a relevant health services sector. If people are in between jobs, that's okay too, but it's important to kind of think about how you relate the studies to the work and the work to the studies. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are the courses in the program. I'm not going to read all the titles, but you can see here the range that's there. The courses that have the asterisks in red beside them, these are actually available to people as elective courses in other programs. So there are a variety of programs at BCIT who use these courses as electives or as required courses. And the remaining courses, you can only access them if you're in the program itself. Yeah, let's go to the next slide, please, Darren. The coursework is done individually and in teams. There are seminar discussions led by teams of students. There are individual discussion postings. We do have some Zoom meetings that are not mandatory, but they're highly recommended. We've got these fishbowl exercises where people debrief on some leadership scenarios and exercises. There's some major team projects where leadership is a contact sport, so it's not something that you can just do by yourself. So the team projects are super important as part of the learning environment, and we have ways to de-risk working in teams through team contracts. But in all, there's a mix of individual and group work. We know when people are busy at work and with family and maybe children or aging parents, you really do want to have control over your time, and we respect that. So we've got a mix of all variety of learning to support working adults. Next slide, please. The final course in the program is a Leadership Integrative project. It's a 3-credit course that involves the learner, the student, who acts as a project lead, BCIT as the academic facilitator, and an organizational sponsor. And the aim here is to address a problem or opportunity in the workplace that's of interest to the organization, that can serve as a platform for you as the student to move to the next stages of your career, and also to achieve the final course in the program. In this model of doing the integrated project, you don't actually implement a solution at work, but you do the full consulting, the investigation, the evidence-informed knowledge translation with your sponsor to get to a reasonable and a viable recommendation. In addition to this project, you can leverage this to gain some visibility for your work. So by doing this, quite often students would bring in an invited guest. So like maybe a standards expert, a subject matter expert, say somebody from the BC Patient Quality Council, or maybe from Accreditation Canada, or maybe a regional expert or someone from another facility to participate in the project. So there's quite a lot of leverage and benefit of projects like this. And that's why it is done as the integrative project at the end of the program. By the time you get to the halfway point in the program, it's time to start thinking about maybe coming up with a range of topics to focus on, maybe sponsors to involve, maybe have a discussion with me to kind of strategize as to which one would be the best to go for, and to line that up with a proposal to start the final project. So next slide, please, Darren. So the integrated project, just kind of coding and summarizing some of the key aspects of this project. Some of the domain areas you'll see on the left, these are kind of like the disciplinary areas or the departmental areas that the projects focus on. Quite often it's on one's own discipline. And then on the right column, these are more like the corporate or business characteristics of projects. And I'll read some of these because they are really pertinent. So improving workflow, improving processes and the flow of information, focusing on policy development or evaluation of programs, focusing on healthy workforce. This is super important if you're building a team. A lot of professions have challenges around kind of onboarding new people, not just parachuting in and starting work, but actually properly onboarding people so that there's retention and wellness and other issues are addressed. Standards and guidelines, quite often there's a need for making things work in a similar way across areas. So these, and training, that's really super important. Organizational change, so restructuring units, involving maybe new technologies and retraining people for the new technologies. Patient voice, that's another area that's quite important and often is one of the topics that people address in the integrator project. So you can see there's quite a lot of latitude here, and the aim is to kind of make progress towards achieving that bigger vision of transforming healthcare. Next slide, please, Darren. So here are some topics, some titles from past projects. I've kind of gone through our database and selected some of them. You'll see that they range in topic area. Some of them might pertain to your own area of study, like let's say pharmacy or transfusion medicine or CT. Some of these are in different provinces. Next slide, please, Darren. And this goes on and on. So emergency room overcrowding, radiation safety. Some projects are done also in Quebec, and some are overseas. We had 2 students who were physicians based in India, sponsored by the WHO, who took the program as well. There's really quite a range of things. Next slide, please, Darren. So in terms of the faculty are members of the School of Health Sciences, a combination of full-time faculty, such as myself, and adjunct instructors, so people with middle level and senior level experience as not as clinicians, but as executives and managers in the health system. All faculty have master's degrees and above and have additional qualifications, diverse experience from a variety of disciplines as well. Next slide, please. Endorsed by the Canadian College of Health Leaders and the Emerging Health Leaders. These are industry association groups. Emerging Health Leaders tends to focus on the kind of people who are newer in their career. It's kind of like a grassroots node sort of organization, and the Canadian College is a national organization. Next slide, please. Internally, within BCIT, there are 4 programs where actually schools of transportation, computing, business with project management, and within our own School of Health Sciences make use of our courses. So as a student in this program, you'll be interacting with some people from other programs as well. Next slide, please. So in terms of the schedule, like I mentioned earlier, it's 8 courses spread over 2 years. And this is something like a Gantt chart or a way to visualize the most optimum schedule. So let's just take the 2021 year, which we just completed, as an example. Let's pretend it's January 2021. If you start the program, the most optimal schedule works out to be starting in January to take 2 courses at once in green, and then April take 1 course, in September take 1 course. Next January, maybe take 2 courses, and then 1, and then 1, and then finish at the end. So that is the most optimal schedule. But you can see in this chart, there are these boxes called additional. So what this means is that we offer the range of courses throughout the year. So it doesn't really matter when you start the program. You could always start with some courses. And then when January comes around, we can deem that to be the start of your program. And then you can march along the standard schedule. The aim here is to be flexible so people can start at any time. But just know that the most optimal schedule is the ones that are illustrated in those colors. Next slide, please, Darren. So the costing of the program is around $7,968. That's for 8 courses over 2 years. There's the tuition component, the textbook components. We try to push down the cost of texts when there are open source books. We try to use them. As well, courses have journal articles from the field, which can be accessed within the course for free. There's no other extra charges for those. In addition to getting books from BCIT, you could also get the electronic versions through Amazon.com and other sources as well. Next slide, please, Darren. So in terms of the market positioning, the way we position this program in the ecosystem of programs related to health leadership or related topics in British Columbia, you'll see in the middle of this diagram the advanced certificate from BCIT. This is positioned kind of as an in-between price between what you might see in an undergraduate program when you first started out your studies. Those typically are supported by the tax dollars. So you're usually paying, your tuition is usually around half the actual delivery cost because our tax dollar covers the other half. And that's to help people get started in their career and their life. At the top end of this diagram, you'll see the EMBAs, the master's programs. They tend to be around $25,000, $30,000, or in the case of the EMBA, around $60,000 at UBC. These are programs that are premium priced, oftentimes sponsored by one's own workplace to kind of be that big investment with a big payoff in the career. So our program is really aimed at the middle layer. It's clearly not the undergraduate, and it's clearly not going to be the the EMBA sort of. It's designed to be highly accessible for people from all professions, and very much like the ones who graduate from BCIT, who are at that emerging stage of career for accessibility. It's really for everybody. It's not meant to be kind of exclusive. Next slide, please. So in terms of progressing through the program, there are two ways that people can get started, and we have our expectations about what is good progress. In terms of starting courses in the program, people can take those courses that I had mentioned that are available as electives. You can actually take those courses without being accepted into the program. We call that undeclared major. So it's taking courses, 3 of them, a la carte. The other way to get started in the program is to do the formal application, get that reviewed and get accepted, and then be formally in the program. So those are 2 ways to get started. Next slide, please, Darren. So if you do the formal application and you're accepted to the program, the first milestone is make sure you start your first course within 6 months of being accepted. So don't be accepted and then just wait a year and get started. Psychologically, that's probably not so great if you keep in mind what your goal was for applying to the program. Second milestone is to complete the first 4 courses within the first year. And at that point, we would offer this statement of completion. And that's kind of the milestone to start thinking about your integrated project and who your sponsor would be. That's milestone number 3. And then milestone number 4 is to finish all 8 courses within the 2-year period. Next slide, please. If you decide to try a couple courses to see what it's like, you'd be called the undeclared major category. And in that case, we recommend try to take the course every academic term and or have a conversation with me to let me know what your goals are, if this is kind of like leaning towards what you're interested in, or if you want to do something else instead. It's important to be accountable to yourself and to BCIT in terms of what your plans are as an undeclared major. Next slide, please. So the next steps to get started in the program are to look at the admissions and registration process. You could either take a course or start an application. There are advisors at BCIT who can help guide you in terms of preparing your application and making sure that it's complete, it's done correctly, and so on. As well, you can get an assessment from me. This is not a formal assessment. This is kind of a bit of feedback as to, you know, is the program the right thing for you at this point in your career? Maybe have a conversation with me. We also have a newsletter that you can sign up and receive updates on the program. Next slide, please, Darren. Okay, so I've got some testimonials here. These are from past and current students in the program, and I've highlighted some of the key points that seem to jump out when I reflect on what are some of the motivations students have for the program. This person is reflecting on, you know, really studying hard to get into one's career, being really great with one's own expertise and specialty, but at this point, really looking to connect with people from different backgrounds to take that broader perspective and X-ray tech. Next slide, please. This person providing technical expertise and leadership to 30 to 40 people has been a lab tech for 12 years. Next slide, please. This person is involved with mentoring new students. She actually graduated from our program, got into an MHA program at Ottawa, at University of Ottawa, and is now moved to another province running a department. Next slide, please. This person, interesting story, Nuke Med Tech, 2 years of experience in a leadership role, so still kind of new, but at the same time being one of the youngest in the department. So that's often a challenge that people have, is trying to lead and support colleagues who might actually be more experienced. Next slide, please. This person is commenting on has an accounting background, so a professional, a CPA or CGA. but is also in pharmacy. So trying to reconcile the two and kind of bridge the business perspective with the clinical perspective and vice versa, being able to speak the language on both sides of the house. Next slide, please. Yeah, and then next slide, please. Okay, so that was a presentation. I think we probably spent around 10 minutes at the beginning with some intros, and then a 30-minute presentation. I'm kind of wanting to hear from those of you if you have questions of me. I guess the way to handle this is you could speak up, speak into the audio if you like to vocalize a question, or type it into the chat and I could read, paraphrase, and then give some responses. So let's hear if you have any questions. If this was a class, I could call on people, but I wouldn't do that today.
Sean, maybe I'll ask a question, just something that comes to mind that I'm wondering. You talked about a la carte. Would you recommend maybe starting a la carte in most cases to get familiar with the program, the format?
Yeah, it's you know, when you think of investing in something, and this is a bit of theory here, when you can invest in something and it kind of has secondary benefits, so in any case, even if you change your mind later, you still get the benefit. Taking a course a la carte is a way to do that, because you would be a BCIT student. You could tell people that you're a BCIT student and you're just working on your first course. If you decide to apply to the program and get accepted later, the credit will be honored. So that will become part of your academic transcript at BCIT. So it's a great way to kind of test the water. You know, people are busy with life, work, study, family. So coming to terms with what it takes to go back to school, just taking one course is a great way to do that. So both options are fine. Both are really reasonable to do. Sometimes people are concerned about, oh my gosh, now I'm accepted to the program. I've got 2 years to finish and something's going to happen in my life and maybe it's not going to work out in terms of timing, starting a family, et cetera, et cetera. So we have mechanisms to do leave of absence from the program. Let's say at the halfway point, you realize you need an extra year or you need to take time out. We can do that. If you need to extend the program by adding an extra year, we can also do things like that as well. There's no downside to extension, but it's super important to be accountable. So having a meeting with me, documenting the decision to reset the end date to the future end date, and then kind of checking back later. It's when people are in the work life, you know, there's only so many things to juggle, and it's not often you have somebody who's kind of at your side, watching your back to kind of help you move ahead on the goals that you set for yourself. That's part of what we do through our department. So, so yeah, that's kind of my response. Maybe one more thing I'd like to say is, when you're an undeclared major, you're not on our list of people who are officially in the program. So when it's time to do that email communication of maybe a conference that you can attend or a recommendation to check something out, or there's a networking opportunity, we don't see the people who are undeclared majors because they don't show up on our short list. So if you are declared into the program and you're officially accepted, you show up on these lists, and so you get more priority attention.
Thanks, Shan. I see a question in the chat, and it's from Sam. It's how many hours of homework are expected per course?
That's a great question, Sam. Thank you for asking that. So the typical workload for a course is around 7-8 hours per week, 7 to 8 hours per week. And it kind of depends on your capabilities. And actually, over time, you become more efficient. So there's a bit of trending that happens. If I draw a comparison to maybe undergraduate studies, If you did Psych 100 at university or college or at BCIT, typically you're in class Monday, Wednesday, Friday for an hour. So that's 3 hours per week. And then for every hour in class, you have some ratio of prep work and so on. So it's usually like a 1-to-2 ratio. So that's 9 hours. But in our case, it's around 7 to 8 hours per week per course. And that includes everything, reading, writing, communicating, administration, et cetera, et cetera. Another question from Allison about extra challenges for somebody living out of province versus being here physically. Actually, there's almost no extra challenge. We have students from, in this last term, we had students from the very northern tip of Vancouver Island, Port Hardy, I think it's called, right onto the east coast of Canada, Newfoundland. We had students across the whole country. The only challenge is time zones when we do have like a Zoom call to do a debriefing. But the way we design this is it's not mandatory to be there, and we record it so that people could listen to it later on. People usually work through tools like Google Documents, Google Spreadsheets. They'll get on WhatsApp or some other chat tool and sort things out. And because we have the cohort model and we also use similar teaching and learning techniques through the different courses, people start to get into a clear understanding of how to optimize their work. If you think of your own profession in your own discipline, let's say you are in looking at quality improvement for medical imaging, and you are doing work with the CAMRT on standards or something, you're going to have colleagues across different provinces, and it's just part of work, like distance is part of what you have to incorporate into your practice as an emerging professional. So we see that some of the challenges of distance, even now with this last couple of years of COVID, it's just part of the job. So, so we don't see it as a difficult challenge. It's just normal.
Excellent. Thank you, Shan. Would you be able to comment on the success rate of completion?
Success rate of completion.
Yeah, I guess for people who are accepted and who complete.
Yeah, that is hard to say. We graduate around 15 students per year through the program. And I would say that probably 20 people start in earnest each year. So it's hard to say because people do get extensions. And so the distribution kind of varies throughout. I wouldn't say anyone fails out of the program. Usually people are doing fine, but things kind of come up. So that is why the accountability is important. Being approved and part of the program is important. So when we reach out and send some reminders that there's that communication.
Great, thank you, Shan. While people are thinking about or composing another question, should we move on to just give them some contact information while they're still online?
Yes, please. Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, if you want to connect with the Healthcare Management Department, there's at the website address on here, or there's hcm@bcit.ca, and you can talk to Shan or Victoria. And also, please don't hesitate to contact Program Advising. If you have any questions or unsure of something, they are able to answer questions regarding entrance requirements, the application process, student resources, success strategies, program schedules, and many other details as well. They're available to assist you by telephone, email, or in person, and virtual appointments. So if you please go to their webpage at bcit.ca/advising, you can get the most up-to-date contact information and service hours. And if your inquiry is time sensitive, please call them during their telephone advising hours, and this is the best option to get your question answered quickly. So I'll just go back in case there's any more questions, and we're coming close to our time. But I haven't noticed any more in the chat. If anyone would like to speak up instead, that's totally okay.
I can offer a suggestion on getting in touch with us. Can you go back a slide, Darren, to where it says hcm@bcit.ca?
Certainly.
So the best way to email either me or Victoria Banham is to that address, hcm@bcit.ca. It's the address for our department, and it's a shared inbox. So it'll maximize your response rate from our department if you email that. If you email me directly at my BCIT personal address, it'll get kind of mixed in with a lot of other stuff. So the best place to go to is the HCM address. And our website is very detailed. Please read everything you can there before asking questions. But we would love to hear from you. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Shan. Do you think we should wrap it up?
Yeah, unless there's anyone has any other burning questions, I think it would be good to maybe start wrapping up. Darren, could you kind of give people an update as to when the slide deck will be shared and where they can kind of receive the materials?
Yes, absolutely. A copy of the slide presentation will be sent out to all registrants, assuming early next week. It'll take us a little bit to get all the videos uploaded to YouTube, so we can include those links for everyone who has registered. And so I guess, yeah, late next week at the latest, I would assume. And I think that's all. And other than thanking everyone very much for being with us today and accepting our best wishes for your future in health sciences or leadership,